I will do, as usual, the boring talk of the day, which is just providing a status updates of the work program in the ETSI NFV. My name is Joan Triay. I'm the technical manager of the ETSI NFV, and I'm working for DOCOMO based in Munich, Germany. Okay, so I will start, as usual, providing an overview of the ETSI NFV in terms of what work we do and what work we have done. Then I will provide a little bit of details of what the Release 2 specifications are, and then also introduce very high level some of the aspects that we are covering in the Release 3. And then afterwards, my colleagues will provide you a lot more and many more details. Okay, so this slide, I have been using it already a few times. And the reason is because I like the summary that it provides in terms of the overall picture of the different releases that the ETSI NFV has been working on. One piece of advice, here you will also see releases based on numbers. You don't have to, or you should not mislead these numbers with releases from the OSM, which they also use numbers, but as you can see, they are already now in the release number 4. We are still on the release number 3. Standards are slow, some people say. Okay, so release 1 basically covers the first 2 years of existence of the IAG, and what we did during that period was to gather together all the community. Actually, many companies joined. That was great. And what we focused was on checking the feasibility of the NFV, how it needs to be performed, and what are the gaps in the industry in order to realize it. We did a lot of work in terms of reports and specifications, and we concluded on defining the architectural framework where we provided the different aspects and areas of interoperability in terms of NFV, including the infrastructure, the VNFs, how to integrate the VNFs into the network services, and then how to also manage and orchestrate all these different abstractions and artifacts. In the Release 2, basically what we did was to take over all the work from the Release 1 in terms of the definition of the architecture and focus on providing interoperability on that architecture. And for this, we formalize the requirements, formalize interfaces, formalize data models, and so on. For example, we delivered very clear specifications about, for example, the packages of the VNFs, the description of VNFs, network services, acceleration aspects, which are necessary actually in production environments for the infrastructure, and also on defining internal and external interfaces from the NFV Mano stack. What we are doing with the Release 3 is we are enriching this architectural framework based on the assumption that what we want to do is actually to make NFV a reality for the network operators. So we are focusing on enriching the architecture in terms of adding new features to improve the operational aspects of the NFV, as well as also trying to cover the support of NFV for the future networks that the network operators will have to face. These are just a list of the features, and Jeremy later on will go more in detail in some of them. Okay, so right now, what is the status in the ETSI NFV? We are doing Release 2 maintenance. So we published some of the Stage 2 specifications already in 2016. And since then, we have already covered a couple of maintenance rounds of specifications. And we are right now in the 3rd one. We are also still covering a few gaps in terms of specifications of Release 2. Like, for example, we are about to complete the Stage 3 specification for the descriptors. We are also covering also other aspects like performance measurements and metrics, this is always ongoing, so anyone can define new metrics at any time. Also enhancing in terms of security, the packaging and the APIs that have been delivered by the Stage 3 work. And also recently triggered the work for providing test specifications to check the conformance of the APIs. And of course, we are working on the Release 3. So for the Release 3, we considered initially 17 features and enhancements. Some of them have evolved and work in progress at faster pace than others. And yeah, again, Jeremy will provide you more information later on. The current focus right now is on the stage 2 level specifications. But of course, some of these features will need to be implementable in terms of specifications, and there will be work needed for the stage 3 work. And this is not going to finish just this year. The way forward that we are doing in terms of delivering the release 3, we are trying to complete sets of features, let's call it in an agile manner. So trying to complete and sequence the completion of some of the features, and then come and start releasing different versions of the specifications. Like, for example, already now in the mid this year, in the summer, we are expecting to finish 4 or 5 of the features that we considered for the release 3, and we are going to already document them and provide the corresponding specifications. This work will likely finish in 2019, so we will go for the whole 2018 and part of 2019. Stage 3 work will also need to be covered, as I mentioned, and for this, part of it will be just done in 2019. And 2019 and beyond, obviously, we will also trigger additional work in terms of testing specifications, and more importantly, also trigger plug tests to check all the features that have been specified as part of Release 3. Okay, that was just the general overview of the current work. A few words about the Release 2. If you are familiar with it or not, this slide is just for clarification. Sometimes it has been misunderstood that some of the specifications of Release 2 are very tied to certain specifications, and this is not true, because actually how the ETSI NFV is composed is that we have different working groups, and the different working groups have different scopes of work, and they focus on different areas, and mostly different areas also in terms of the specification process. For example, we have the IFA specs, which are the ones that are delivering the stage 2 solutions of the interfaces and the information models. Then these specifications are taken by the SOL working group, and they do all the stage 3 work. So they provide a representation of the APIs, which is implementable, based on the specifications that we did in the stage 2. And then we also have specifications from the test working group, specifications that focus on testing the functionalities defined in the stage 2, but as well, as I mentioned, for example, now to work towards providing even conformance of APIs according to the stage 3 specs from the SOL working group. Okay, so the release 2, as I mentioned, took all the input from the release 1, and we focus on 2 main aspects, and I think that this is just not new, but everyone is doing the same. We focus on aspects from the design perspective of the network. So we define the network service descriptors. We define as well the VNF descriptors and how to package the VNFs. That is the design part of the network. So we focus more on providing specifications for these descriptors. But then, obviously, we need to deploy all this. And how we deploy this? Basically, that was the purpose of defining the NFV Mano stack to help translate from the design and the input information provided on interfaces to create and deploy the network. And we focus in the release 2 on formalizing all the requirements and interfaces for the different aspects and the different layers in the stack. So for example, we clarified all the interfaces that are exposed by what we call the NFVOs. And the NFVOs here are responsible for managing the network services. We also define all the interfaces related to the management of the VNFs, and this is done by the VNFM. And also on doing all the life cycle and the management of the virtualized resources, which is a task from the VIM and the NFVI. So this is just very high level, but the idea here is that you can grasp the idea of what are the main focus areas of the release 2 specifications. As I mentioned, we already published this first set of stage 2 specs in 2016. We have already done a couple of maintenance rounds on these specifications. Of course, what we want to do is to improve the specs, to maintain them in order to make sure that If there is a bug or a correction needed, we can provide it, and we can correct it. But not only that, what we also did as part of the maintenance is to get feedback also from open source. Like, for example, we had a specialist task force that was doing or helping us doing gap analysis of our Alpha 5 and 6 specifications with the OpenStack. We also took into account feedback received from other projects like OSM and ONAP in terms of the information modeling for descriptors and packages and network service descriptors. And also, another task that we did in the maintenance is that we have also done alignment of the stage 2 and stage 3. In some cases, what we identified is that the stage 3 was not clear enough to be created based on the stage 2 spec. And what we did is kind of re-engineer a little bit the stage 2 specification so it was easier to be implementable in terms of a protocol or data model. And for example, one of the consequences of this is that some of the capabilities that we initially specified in the stage 2, we changed them afterwards. Like, for example, initially in the stage 2, we had separate interfaces for handling all the notification of lifecycle changes in the network service instances and VNF instances. And what happened afterwards with the alignment of the stage 3 was that all this notification system was integrated into another existing interface. And this was done because of this alignment. Okay, so the release 2, as I mentioned, we have also progressed a lot on the delivery of stage 3 representations. As I mentioned, these are delivered by the SOL working group, and basically we refer to them as the SOL APIs. And one piece of advice is that these SOL specifications are not alternative of the IFA specs. They are just the implementable representations in the stage 3. So for example, here in the picture, I show you that there is a correspondence in between the stage 2 and the stage 3 specifications. And for example, we have IFA 7, IFA 8, and IFA 13, and the corresponding ones in the stage 3 are the SOL 3, SOL 2, and SOL 5. And similar cases also for the descriptors. And well, here I'm just now showing what is the stage 2 and the stage 3, but obviously we have to put the testing into place. And testing here, for example, interacts with both because they take the input from the stage 2 functional point of view, and they also then do the conformance API testing specs. Team will give you more details about this. This is just a timeline of publication of the stage 3 specifications. One of the milestones I would like to highlight here is the availability of open API representations of the SOL 2 and SOL 3, which were just right now recently made available. And you can just follow, click on the link, and you will have it. And this is a very important milestone, as I mentioned, because this will also help the adoption of the APIs that have been produced by the SOL working group. And we welcome feedback. We work on the release 3, but obviously, if we find something that has to be improved or corrected in the release 2, we are there to help improve the specs. You can also go on the first link, and over there's a link to the release 2 description document, and it's one of the documents that we use in the IHE to provide a summary of all the capabilities and functionalities that are specified in the release 2. Okay, so release 3. I will also go here very fast because Jeremy will provide you many more details. As I mentioned, the focus of the release 3 is try to enrich the architectural framework defined in the ETSI NFV, make it ready for expansive deployment, and also consider new and additional and needed operational capabilities. Is what we call like an intersection of different aspects. Like we take over the baseline specs from the release 2 when it comes for operational framework of network services, VNFs, and virtualized resources. We add additional operational features. We consider also how to incorporate and formalize the adoption of any advances in terms of virtualization technologies, and also consider additional requirements that may come in when we want NFV to support future networks, like, for example, 5G and network slicing. Okay, this is very similar slide, but in this one, the purpose is to provide you or give you a little bit of more references to the actual work items that we handle for all these different aspects. This is just a slide that shows, for the time being, the representation from the stage 1 and stage 2 perspective. As I mentioned, we have all the inputs from the release 2 in terms of the baseline operational framework. We introduce advances in virtualization, like, for example, additional requirements for support of cloud-native VNFs. One of the things that we did was to also formalize the requirements for hypervisor-based virtualization. Also, we consider additional aspects of acceleration that were not possible to be finished in the release 2. We also executed different work items to make sure that NFV is there to be used by something. And the most thing that comes to mind, everyone in the world right now, is 5G and network slicing. So we executed an analysis and a gap analysis about the features that are needed in the NFV to make sure that we can support network slicing. Not only that, we also have features that relate to how to integrate and interwork the MEC into the NFV. And then all the additional operational features that I mentioned. We have many of them. I hope Jeremy will give you some more information. We are thinking, or we have features related to things that the network operator needs when it comes to deploy NFV, like how we handle the software updates and upgrades, how we handle the licensing. I'm not going to deploy in a single data center. I will deploy across all the country. How do I set up all the connectivity in between the multi-sites? So all these aspects are additional features that we are going to add now as part of the release 3. This is just a reference for you. If you also want to get some information about which is the list of the features, you can go and download the release 3 definition document. It's not updated yet as of April 2018, but it will be shortly updated now before the plenary, that is next month. One thing I wanted to remark here on this slide is that all the action plans and the schedule of all the work that the teams in the ETSI NFV are defining for delivering the specification of the release 3 are now also publicly available on the wiki page of the NFV. This is a snapshot that takes once in a month, so it might not be the most updated information when you go and check it. But yes, as I mentioned, it will be updated on a monthly basis. And basically, there, all the feature teams report back about the progress on doing this specification of the features. And that's it. If you want to get more information, you are welcome to go to any of the links. Some of them are the generic pages, and some of them are more detailed information about the release 3. And one additional comment is that I think it has already been known by everyone, but all the working drafts in the IHG NFV are publicly available in the open area. So this is just a draft, but we show always how the draft evolves until it is published. And I think that this has also been copied by several of the IHGs in the ETSI framework. And that's it. Thanks for your attention. And if there is any quick question.
You managed to save a couple minutes, so let's take a question. Anybody have any questions? If not,
no.
Thank you.
Okay.
One important thing I just wanted to add before Joanne stepped down, it's important you download this presentation slide. What's important is that a lot of them are specifications that require us to build things. But in addition, many of the reports are available, so at least you can understand some of the future thinking and some of the issues. So some of them are very useful for vendors and service providers to also to see the issues that we are facing. So a lot of them are good reports also from different working groups.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.